everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're a returning viewer, I'm glad you decided to visit me again. If you're a new viewer, I make content on self-love, mindsets and personal growth. I know that it's been a while since I've made one of these long format videos, but there's a good reason. I wanted to take a break last month. I wanted to slow things down, and I also wanted to put my thinking cap on to think about the next video I wanted to make. I do not believe in pushing content just for the sake of pushing content. I do believe in good quality, which is why I took my time, and then I'm coming back to it with this video. In today's video, as you have already made out from the title, this video is going to be how to make small talk. So if you want to know more about it, then keep on watching. Now, small talk is incredibly important. It doesn't matter if you're an introvert, extrovert, ambivert, any other kind of word. But if you live on this planet and if you're a human being, then you need to know how to socialize for your own sake. Small talk is going to help you get ahead in life. It might help you climb the corporate ladder, it might help you climb the social ladder, it might help you build new connections, it might help you rekindle connections. Before I begin with my pointers for this video, I want you to picture the scenario in your head. You have just begun working at a workplace and you're taking the elevator to your workplace, and you are currently stuck in the elevator with the CEO of the workplace. It's just the two of you there and there's no one else. And you're standing there and thinking how they got where they are today, and if you'd ever reach their level of successful. And while you're having these thoughts, the CEO's destination arrives and they exit the elevator. No biggie, right? They wouldn't have remembered you anyway. But here's the deal. What if they did? If you had walked up to the CEO and said hi, the next time the CEO actually entered your office floor, you would have more chances of being recognized by the CEO than someone who had never walked up to him and said hi. Because chances are the CEO might have remembered your face, the CEO might have remembered your tone of voice, they could have remembered anything at all or not have remembered you at all. But it was worth taking the risk, right? So you not introducing yourself here is you missing the opportunity in this case, right? Missing the opportunity of getting closer to the goals that you have in your head for yourself. It is well and good to take a back seat and picture the lifestyle you want, but you're not getting any closer to it by taking the back seat. If you want to accomplish certain goals in life and get to a certain place, you have to familiarize yourself with those goals. So in this case, if you want to become the level of successful as how much the CEO is, you would have better chances of getting there if you would have gotten closer to that contact by introducing yourself and familiarizing yourself with that person than having not introduced yourself to them at all. This brings me to my lesson number 1. When it comes to small talk, always take the initiative. The CEO or someone important is not actually going to walk up to you and say hi. And I know that in a fairy tale world, that probably might have been the case, but that is hardly the case in real life. The next time you see an opportunity, we all have thoughts, but do not keep pondering on those thoughts. Act on it. Just take the plunge, walk up to the person and introduce yourself. That brings me to my lesson number 2. How do you introduce yourself? It is very important to understand the manner which you'll be following to introduce yourself. So in this case, you walk up to the CEO and you say hello and you introduce yourself by your full name, okay? Now, always remember, how you introduce yourself to somebody will always depend on the type of contact. Like we saw in this example, since it is the CEO, I'm saying hello, which is a formal way of addressing someone, and I'm using my full name. If this had been a social contact where I was trying to build a connection, I might have led with hi or a hey, and I might have just used my first name. Please don't use internet lingos but proper English language, because in case the person is not familiar with the lingo that you're using, you might have made that person awkward or feel like they do not know enough in the very first instance that you walked up to them. So this person is now not going to associate your memory with something pleasant, but might associate you with making them feel inadequate because they do not have the same level of knowledge as you. Lesson number 3 is to know the topics to bring up during small talk. I see a lot of people getting this wrong. There are certain topics that should never be brought up during small talk, and that is religion, money, and politics. This is because someone's religious views, political views, or how much someone makes is private information. Until and unless they offer this information to you willingly, never discuss this with them. What are some topics that you can bring up in small talk? Number one, current affairs. Number two, mutual interests. Number three, the weather. Now, talk about the weather can fizzle out really quickly, but that is the purpose of small talk. It is brief. You usually talk about random nothings. So it is alright to bring up the weather in this case. A helpful tip is to always assess the environment that both of you are sharing, and then it is appropriate to bring that same thing up because both of you are party to it and both of you can contribute your thoughts on that subject. So if you're stuck in an elevator, you could bring up the elevator. Let's say it's dusty, it's not been cleaned, you bring that point up. Or let's say you're stuck for too long, there's maintenance issues, the elevator is making a noise, you could bring that up. If let's say it's a social contact you met at a yoga class, you could bring the workings of the class up. If you remember the first lesson I discussed, I asked you to take the initiative when it comes to making small talk. That brings me to my fourth lesson. You don't always have to keep taking the initiative when you're already in small talk. You have initiated the conversation, and when the person on the other end has offered something, lesson number 4 is going to be you have to be an active listener. You do not have to keep on bringing up new things. The onus is not on you to discuss new subjects. If you're on one single subject that you're discussing, listen to what the other person is saying. When you make a follow-up statement, make sure that you keep it open-ended and not close-ended. Try to keep it a follow-up question and not a follow-up statement, because a close-ended means that you are ready to close a conversation. This is something that we'll discuss a little later in the video, but this is something that you use to close a small talk. This is not the approach that you will be taking if you wish to keep the talk going. Lesson number 5 is to pay attention to non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is understanding body language cues. Pay attention to someone's body language and make sure that your own body language is good enough so that the other person knows that you're invested in this conversation. How do you do that? How do you understand someone else's body language? So let's say you and I are making small talk. And if I'm constantly looking at my watch, or if I'm constantly looking at the door, or if my body is angled towards the door, it means that I'm trying to tell you that I need to leave the room. Or my body is trying to tell you that I'm not interested in that conversation. Sometimes people who are conscious and understand how body language works, they use that as very consciously use their body language as a hint to tell you that they wish to leave the room or they wish to leave this conversation. For some people who are not conscious of their body language, this just happens and they're not aware that they are sending these signals to you, but this is on you to read these body language cues and to understand when it is time to end the conversation or to use a different tactics to allow your conversation to be more engaging so as to not have the other person leave the room. When you are engaging in small talk, make sure that you have open body language by leaning towards the person when you're making a conversation, by making direct eye contact, by nodding at them when they say something that you agree to. Use your body to communicate as well, and not just your mouth to speak. This brings me to my next lesson. When you get the cue that the conversation is ending and the other person wishes to leave the room or exit the conversation, then how do you end the conversation? You don't just leave the room abruptly. That is not acceptable. Once you have assessed that this conversation has come to an end, before the other person can excuse themselves, you excuse yourself. This is because conversation endings can be fairly awkward for people, which is why if you have initiated the conversation, the onus is on you to end the conversation. Point number 6 is to learn how to close a conversation when you're making small talk. How do you end this conversation now? Now, there's proper etiquette in which you can end this conversation. You do not just say a bye if you're building a contact and you want them to remember you, you want to connect with them in the future. You say that you had a lovely time talking to them. You part with either exchanging numbers or you exchange your business card, depending on your intent and the kind of contact you're approaching. But make sure that if you're planning to utilize this contact in the future and it wasn't just some casual conversation, you part with some form of contact, some form of virtual contact preferably, which you can access or they can access, because you're not bumping into each other every day. Point number 7 is to transition from small talk to big talk. There are times where opportunities where you might not want to close your small talk. You might want to transition into big talk or more meaningful talk. So in this case, you might want to transition your small talk into big talk. How do you do that? This is sometimes done to see if they can be more than just an acquaintance. How you transition into a big talk is to make a vulnerable admission. Let's say I'm talking about physical health and I'm someone who I go to yoga class with, right? And I make small talk, but I want to engage at a more deeper level. I make a vulnerable statement. I might talk about mental health then. Now that I've brought mental health into the conversation, or I've brought something vulnerable into the picture, I'm going to assess how they process this information. If the person I'm engaging with shuts it down or just listens to me and doesn't offer something of their own, I'm going to end the conversation there, because this usually means they either find it uncomfortable or do not wish to discuss this at the moment. Maybe they have some place to be. It could be a lot of reasons. But at that point of time, if you do not see the other person reciprocating with something similar to what you have offered in the conversation, then this is time for you to close the conversation. Now, to make this video easier for you, I'm going to break down the order of small talk. First things first, we begin with an introduction. We go up to the person and we introduce ourselves. Then we bring up the topic. That is point number 2. We introduce an appropriate topic for small talk. Number 3 is active listening or asking follow-up questions to what the other person is offering in a conversation. Number 4 could be closing the conversation or transitioning into big talk. If you keep these 4 pointers in mind, you will be able to make some small talk. Please remember that you're not going to get it right in the first shot. You will have to practice and you'll have to be patient with yourself. That was all for today's video. Thank you so much for staying with me till the end. If you found this video helpful or if you learned something new, then comment the word helpful at the bottom of this video. And if I have added value to your screen time in any way, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel for more such helpful videos. I will see you in my next video. Bye bye. Take care.